Hi, my name is Oliver Lake, and I'm going to talk a little bit about composing. When you're composing, it's the same process I think it is when you're practicing. You want to get the fundamentals down and learn about chord changes and voice leading and all of that. And once you've learned those fundamentals, throw them out of the window. The main thing for you to do, from my experience, is to go by how does it sound? If it sounds good, then it's valid. And that's primarily the rule of thumb that I use for compositions. But if you examine some of my compositions from a technical standpoint, you may find out that this voice was what on paper or theoretically it wasn't supposed to go to that voice. I know that when I write, I know that I'm breaking the rules. The primary goal for me in composition is what does it sound like. If I like what it sounds like, that's what I go with. And I think that's what we have to do as composers, just to really trust yourself and go from your heart when you're composing and your improvisations, you go from your heart. In terms of preparing yourself for compositions, I think it's the same thing you would do when you're preparing yourself as an improviser. You've listened, you've studied, you've learned the fundamentals, and then you go ahead and create your own style or your own music or your own compositions. So how to get ready for that is putting in the hours. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So after you've gotten a certain amount of hours in of practice, a certain amount of hours in of compositions, hundreds and hundreds of compositions, you get better, and as time goes by, you get better. So I would just say putting in the time is one of the most important commitments that you have as a composer and a performer. For knowing when the composition is done, sometimes it takes various ways of approaching that. Sometimes I know that it's finished on that very day that I've written that piece. Other times, once I've rehearsed with the band, I get other ideas and that composition is still alive, and I go ahead and change it. And then it happens 3-4 times. I've even recorded some pieces and then later come back and added or change something. So the piece is alive, so you can move and work with it and don't feel bad about changing it at any time. And that's the way I've approached some of my compositions until I feel like it's definitely done. When I'm writing, I do use the aid of the computer, and having that aid as a way of listening back to some of the parts that I've written. That's been very useful for me as a composer. I'm currently working on an orchestra piece and working on a string quartet, working on work for my 16-piece big band. So having the computer there and having the music software to hear that music being played back to me has been very useful. And also knowing the individual styles of, say, like in my big band, I generally have the same guys that play with me all the time, and sometimes I'll write something especially for this particular trumpet player because I know how he's going to approach this melody, or this particular saxophone player because I know how he's going to approach the composition in his own unique way. So when I said I can hear this person playing the melody or that person playing the melody. So it's important when you're writing for individuals as well, if you're fortunate enough to have the same people over and over when you're doing your compositions. In terms of names or for the compositions, for me it works in various ways. Sometimes I'll have an obvious name and I'll try to shape the music around that. For instance, I'm writing a piece now based on Native American melodies, so I have some place to go with that completely. And then the name that I came up is Heritage. My great-grandmother was Native American, so that kind of defined itself right away. But there are other times when I'll write a piece and have no idea what the name is about, and I'll be doing what I said earlier, where I'm going by the sound, and I'm going by whether I like it or not. And then it's very random how I come up with the name. The piece is finished, and I'm there saying, what is the name going to be? And one time I happened to be looking in my medicine cabinet, and on the top of the jar it said, while pushing down, turn. So I named the piece While Pushing Down Turn. Later, I met a lady. She said, "Oh, that piece you wrote about whirling dervishes while pushing down turn, that was great." But obviously, that title didn't come from a whirling dervish. But so for me, it's 360 degrees. The titles come from everywhere. Sometimes I have a specific color that I'm trying to reach with the music or express through the music, and the title is befitting that particular color that the music that can conjure. Other times, it's completely disjunct. I think when I started out, I used to think about writer's block, but if you are doing this on a daily basis, and I have a little cliche or a little saying that I have on my computer or I put on my bulletin board, I am a composer. And if I look at that and sit down and start, things just start growing. A lot of times you have to force it. Sometimes it comes very naturally and things just grow from one thing to the next. Other times you have to kind of fight to get started. But if you do it on a daily basis, it happens. Composing is important to me because of some of the things that I said earlier about finding your own voice and how I felt that I was going to leave any kind of lasting mark in the music that's called jazz. Some of the more traditional players in jazz have played that style much better than I felt that I could do, and I felt if I was going to make a mark, I would have to play in my own unique way and compose in the same way as well. So it's satisfying for me to be a creative improviser and also be a composer and play my own melodies and improvisations.